Hello everyone, welcome back to the show. My name's Dan, this Exploder, and boy do I have an episode for you. Holy shit. I had an idea for an episode this week. I had a different topic. No, don't worry, I'm going to do that topic later on. But something's happened in the last couple of days as recording. It only happened a couple days ago. And yeah, a lot of people are being accused, and some rightfully so, of some very weird shit. Yeah, so first of all, I'm going to get this out of the way. I normally don't curse on this show. Not that I have anything against it. Personally, in my real life, anyone who knows me, I curse quite a bit. It's not that I have a crutch. It's not that I need to do it, but it's just something that I do because, you know, it's like having food without spice. You can make food without spices, but why the fuck would you want to? But in general, on the podcast, I don't curse a lot because it's just, I think I don't need to. And if someone's listening to it, like at work or whatever it is, I think it's just more accessible to not have somebody cursing the whole time. So again, I'm not that I'm censoring myself, I just don't see the need in throwing those words in unless it's necessary. That being said, on the topic I'm going to cover today, if you listen to this podcast at work or around people, and this is just sort of a safe podcast, do not listen to this episode that way, because I'm going to curse a lot. Because what the fuck is going on? I say that because as of June 18th, of 2020, which was a Thursday, for posterity's sake, everyone and their mother decided they had a story to tell. And that story involved about a fifth of the wrestling industry. Oh my god. Now, this goes from anywhere from being in toxic relationships in the past, in the case of Jimmy Havoc, to, I hate to say it, but one of the accusations involves child porn. I don't know if it's true, but it's an accusation. To soliciting inappropriate photos from minors, to God knows what. This has all happened. These literally all came out in the same day. That's what you don't understand. There's a list. I'm going to put a list up in the video version. I'm not going to go over everybody, but I'm going to go through some and talking about some of the more prominent members of the wrestling community that has been affected by this. So I'm not going to talk about every single one, but I am going to talk about, again, one of the more prominent ones, the people that are, you know, some of them work for AEW, some of them work for the NWA, as it is, some of them work for WWE, and then more than a few guys are indie guys who are continuously in the indies. And there are some guys on the list I don't recognize, and I'm just going to say it. I'm not going to talk about it because I don't know them. And, you know, there are all kinds of indie guys. Remember years ago, there was a guy in Cincinnati who was wrestling in that area, very small promotions, but he was working the area, and it turns out he had HIV, and he was doing hardcore matches and bleeding, and he didn't tell anybody. I'd never heard of the guy until I saw his name in the news. So I can't talk about every single person, but I'm going to talk about the more prominent ones. Scandals are nothing new for professional wrestling. I covered that in Company Picnic from Hell in a previous episode. The Rita Chatterton accusations against Vince McMahon. The Mel Phillips scandal. The Terry Garvin Ring Boy scandal, where they sort of threw Pat Patterson under the bus there, but he came back later. I talked about these kind of things. So these things aren't new, but it's very rare that anything like this happens all at once. Like, that's really what made this so unique, and it is in social media. There was no social media when Mel Phillips was being a creep, but there is now when all these other people are being accused of being creeps. And I'm going to also preface this, I know this is pretty much a long preamble here, but I'm going to preface this by saying, I am not saying any of these accusations are true, except for one. There's one I'm gonna take a side on, and when I get to it, you'll understand why. I'm not saying they're true. I'm not saying they're factually correct. I mean, this could be, they could have done it. This could be, in one case, there's a case where it seems a little sketchier than it looks on its face. I'm not saying they did it. I'm not saying they didn't do it. And I think that kind of stuff will come out in time. But what I am saying is these are the accusations, these are what's going on, these are what's being talked about, and these are the issues that are going to have to be handled one way or the other before anything goes forward for their particular careers and for the lives of the people that were affected. These accusations come as part of the Speaking Out movement, hashtag Speaking Out, going around Twitter. Like I said, it's not just one or two things, it's been 17, 18 people, and in this episode, I'm going to cover all of them. Or at least most of them, like I said. Let's start off with Jack Gallagher. The gentleman, which is at this point an ironic nickname, was accused of by a woman named Becky of getting her drunk on New Year's Eve of 2014 at a house party, pouring straight alcohol into her glass, forcing her to drink it, making inappropriate advances toward her, including grabbing her, and when she resisted, to the point he pulled away, he grabbed her skirt and ripped it. Now, this isn't good. I'm not diminishing this whatsoever, but as you're going to find out during this episode, this is not even the tip of the fucking iceberg of what you're about to hear, so buckle the fuck up, kids. Gallagher was released just today. I'm recording this on the 19th, so the day after the accusations. He's already been released. He's cut. He's gone. So I don't know if that's a sign of things to come, but in Jack Gallagher's case, he's gone. The second accusation came from Jordan Devlin, current NXT Cruiserweight Champion. He's currently stuck in the United Kingdom due to the COVID-19 travel restrictions. That's why they have the interim champion, El Fantasma, on the U.S. side of things. He is accused by a former girlfriend of being physically abusive. She's even posted pictures of bruises she claims Devlin caused her. Now, of course, Devlin denies this, says it's summarily false, and he's setting he doesn't even know if he's going to sue. He might sue her for defamation. Now, again, this is a he said, she said. It's an ex-girlfriend. I'm not saying she's right, and I'm not saying she's wrong. We don't know. As of right now, it's a he said, she said thing, and that's how some of these things go. And like I said, I'm not going to pick sides. This is just the accusation as it stands as of today. Travis Banks, another NXT UK star, is accused by wrestler Millie McKenzie of having a year-long secret relationship with him during a time in which she was underage and he was also emotionally manipulative. He, along with Jordan Devlin, have been suspended indefinitely from Progress Wrestling in the UK. And I can imagine going in the future a lot more promotions. I don't know how WWE is going to treat either one of them. They haven't really made a decision yet. But a lot of these independent promotions in the UK that they still work on, quite a few of them already cut ties with them. They've, to the point where some of them held titles and they vacated the titles and said, we're not going to work with them. So that's at least where we're starting at right now. Another NXT UK star, El Ligero, is accused by a former trainee, Natalie Skies, that he was sending sexual requests and comments to her over Snapchat, all of which were inappropriate and unrequited on their part. He is also accused of trying to get her to break up with her boyfriend at the time, and even brought up sensitive family issues with her father, something that is consistent with many grooming techniques used by sexual predators. Apparently, there are more stories about him from other different people, and so far he's sort of been 50-50 on them, saying that a couple of the claims are outright false, and then others he's owning up to them and saying, especially statements made by Mad Elite Skies, and others they acted toward them. He said, basically, it's not even like in a sorry if you took it wrong kind of way, like half-ass. He just said, yeah, I messed up. I shouldn't have done that. I was in a position. I did things I shouldn't have done and said things I shouldn't have done and acted in a way I shouldn't have done, and I'm sorry. And so that's sort of, it's not good that he did it, but it's good to see someone at least take responsibility for their actions. So, I mean, I'm sort of interested to see where that's going to go in the future, but as of right now, he seems like actually one of the better people. I said it's sort of hard, like, a reformed, say, like, you have somebody in prison and they're in prison. They're all criminals, but there's the reformed, and then there are guys who are going to commit the crime the afternoon they get out. So it's not good that he did these things that he's even admitting he did, but it's good to see that he's even taking a little bit of responsibility for them, which is good. So, I don't know. Wolfgang, another NXT UK. A lot of NXT UK guys in here. I don't know. I might want to be rethinking the brand at this point. Wolfgang is being accused by his ex-fiancée, Laura, of not only being emotionally abusive during their relationship, but also having, this is where it gets icky here, child pornography on both his laptop and his camera's memory card. Yeah, he hasn't responded to these charges. These came out again Thursday with everyone else. He hasn't responded as of Friday, as of taping, but yeah, that's a hell of a thing to charge somebody with. I mean, that's the kind of thing where, you can say, oh, he was a bad boyfriend, or, oh, these things. Again, not great things, but if you're going to accuse him of having child porn, that's the kind of thing where you better have some kind of, because you can get sued for that. Especially in the United Kingdom. That's libel laws are a little different there. You can get your ass ripped for saying something like that. So I would imagine that someone like that wouldn't make an accusation flippantly that way. Oh, God. There's another story coming out of AEW that an AEW star, a current star who is married, and someone who used to work for WWE is accused of sexual misconduct. Now, this one's very vague. Now, there are numerous names going around of who it could be, and I'm not going to say any of them because, quite frankly, they haven't even established who it is. And I've gone to different websites, and it's the same story, but the comments are they're all over the map. All they know is that it used to work in WWE, currently works in AEW, and is currently married. They made advances, and this person they made advances towards said no. I'm not sure if it's necessarily a sexual predator thing in this case. I think it was more of they were in a relationship and they were trying to cheat. So I don't know. That's a little different. Not different is AEW ring announcer Justin Roberts, who's being accused by a UK fan of messaging her and trying to solicit nudes from her, even though he knew she was underage. Roberts is in his 30s, and the fan at the time was, I believe, 16, 17, like a child, and he knew that. Ew. Like, I don't care who you are, that's freaking weird. I don't give a shit if you're Justin Roberts or, goddamn Bono. That's fucking weird. Like, who the fuck does that? Jimmy Havoc is accused by an ex-girlfriend of being psychologically and emotionally abusive, threatening to commit suicide on regular occasions as a way to control her, which is basic psychological abuse right there. Another accusation is that he even raped an unnamed third party, which his then girlfriend, who's making some of these accusations, agreed to keep quiet, which is all kinds of fucked up. And AEW has put out a statement that said Havoc is entering rehab to handle his mental health issues, and they'll visit his status in the company at a later date. Now, not that his actions are excusable, especially the rape one. If he actually did rape someone, if that's a part of the story that's true, that should be handled in a lot harsher tone. Mental illness is not a joke. I like I said, I've talked about, I have mental illness. I'm not a lunatic, but I have mental illness I've been dealing with since I was a little kid. And I take medications to keep myself, I take anti-anxiety meds now. So mental illness is not funny. It's not something to mess around with. So it's good to see that he's at least going to deal with the emotional things. Like I said, if he rapes someone, that's a whole different fucking ball game. And I hope that he, gets nailed to a tree, almost literally. But as far as the mental health issues of his relationship, that's the kind of thing where when you get yourself emotionally in a better state, you can be better in the future. So in that regard, I hope he's able to fix these problems and not repeat this cycle. And I know you get the kind of help he needs, and I like AEW being proactive in it. At least they're saying, hey, they're not saying they're going to keep him, they're not saying they're going to fire him. They're saying he's going to go get the help he needs, and we're going to see how we're going to go forward. So they're handling on their end, but they're not locking themselves into either doubling down on keeping him or, well, screw it, it's day one, you're fired. So I like the fact that they're sort of hedging right now, and I like that. Joey Ryan, yeah, Joey Ryan. Remember Joey Ryan, the guy who flipped people around with his dick? Turns out he's a molester. Now, I'm not saying he is, I'm just saying he looks like one, and he's being accused of being one, and he could be one. I don't know. He's accused of molesting a young wrestler by the name of Corey Mink when she drove him from the airport to a WrestlePro show. He kissed her and groped her inappropriately while she was driving him to the show and tried to get her to come to his hotel room, which she declined. Now, keep in mind, this was someone he had met when she picked him up at the airport. She told the promoter of WrestlePro the situation. He apologized to her for putting her in that situation and said that he would never book Joey Ryan again. Then, being pro wrestling what it is, they booked Joey Ryan again 18 months later. Because of course they did. And if that's not enough, and God, I wish it was by now, there's also in the recent times, literally from the time I recorded on Friday till now, which I'm recording on Sunday, that there are new accusations against Velveteen Dream, aka Patrick Clark, from his time when he was a Tough Enough, where he was basically creeping on a 16-year-old boy. I don't know what the hell is going on there. Now, this is not the first time this guy has been accused of this. This was something that was brought up months ago, but it didn't go anywhere. I don't know if, again, these kinds of things, it could have been a completely false accusation, but again, it's something that's coming up yet again. And this was something where months ago it happened sort of on its own and isolated. Now it's coming out again, and from what I understand, there's a couple accusations. I'm not exactly entirely sure, but there's a couple accusations along the way, and they're all pretty much saying the same thing, that he's sending secretive messages to these teenagers, is what they are. Young teenagers even, not even, not 19, we're talking kids, and he's making points of them like, hey, let's keep these messages secret between us, and things like that, which to me, it sounds like someone who knows what they're doing isn't right, and I may be guessing here, maybe I'm jumping to some conclusions, but the fact that this has come up more than once, not good. And then in the middle of all this, and for a guy who's, my God, had the push of his career, from a guy who didn't win Tough Enough to a guy who got in development on his own, did really well, sort of floundered for a little bit, and then found the Velveteen Dream character and is doing so well for himself. For him to be doing stuff like this behind the scenes, that's a career ender. I mean, especially with stuff like, Jack Gallagher got released like the day after. And this guy, if he's going to be, this guy's certainly higher profile in the company's scheme of things than Jack Gallagher. And if this comes out to be true, or even appears to be true, how long are they going to keep him? So this guy very well could have ruined his own career, and rightfully so. I'm not saying this to be sympathetic to him. I'm just saying factually, he may have just ruined his career because of his own actions with teenagers. What the fuck is going on here? I don't know, man. And it seems like there's always these new developments. Another new development that's happened since I recorded originally was Joey Ryan, Dick Flip extraordinaire Joey Ryan, put out a statement. He did what a lot of guys do. Instead of typing out, 55 messages on Twitter, he put out photos of typed out statements, is what you do in Twitter. And he kind of he did sort of this, he kind of denied it, but also kind of admitted it. He's like, I'm not going to say I did everything, and I've talked to my lawyer, and he said not to admit to anything in particular. But then he sort of gives this general, after the Dick Flip became this big viral sensation, that he was traveling around the world, and that maybe, he met a lot of women, and maybe he didn't treat all of them the right way, and sort of in a general sense, and he sort of went like, my wife and I separated, I went to therapy, during this time I was going through all that, plus I'm going around the country, going around the world doing the Dick Flip stuff, and that maybe I wasn't the greatest person, and sort of gave this general apology, but never got too specific. And then I saw these images on Twitter, and I kid you not, from the time I saw them, within a couple of hours, he had not only deleted them, he had deleted his Twitter account. I saw this in real time. Sometimes I hear about these things. I'm not really active on Twitter. I have an account, the personal account, has nothing to do with wrestling. But I'm not on it all the time like some people are. I saw this in real time. I saw this guy, post a thing, responded, sort of said generalized what I said, and stupid me, I didn't get screen caps of it. I didn't realize it was going to disappear so soon. Yeah, it says literally that the account does not exist. So it appears Joey Ryan's deleted his Twitter account in the time, literally in a couple of hours. So, not looking good for him, only because, basically what he said a lot of, even if you don't believe specific examples, what he's basically saying is there's other stuff out there that maybe he shouldn't have done and things like that. So, is it going to affect him? I don't know. Joey Ryan's an indie guy. The only thing that it could affect is his work with Impact. I think that's the important thing here. It could affect his work at Impact, but Impact is, let's be honest. And I actually passively know some guys in Impact, and I don't mean to put them down, but Impact tapes how many weeks ahead of time? They tape, a month or two of television all at once? He's going, even if all this stuff's going on, unless they meticulously make a point of editing him out, he's going to be on that show for at least a month or two. Even if they fire him tomorrow, he's already pre-taped. He's already in. They'd have to go into and make a point of editing him out, which they could, I don't know. But otherwise, his independence, I don't know. It could affect his career. I know for a fact it could affect Patrick Clark, Velveteen Dream. WB could, if they have reason to believe this is true, this could be like an Enzo situation. If they have a reason to believe that it's true and Clark didn't bring it up to them or sort of let this sort of hang out there in the public and not really say anything about it, and WB has a reason to believe that it's even possibly true, they could cut him tomorrow. That's it. So that could really affect him. As far as Joey Ryan, I don't know. Joey Ryan's career, what kind of impact it would make, I don't know. I have no idea. But it doesn't look good. And again, it's all coming at once, and all these guys are coming at once. But then these are just, these two right here are just developments that have happened literally from the time I taped the original episode. So here's a little bit of an update that it's a little update. So we're sort of getting behind the scenes here where I record. And this is actually an update given a couple days later on Sunday. I just want to add that in there, sort of try and keep up on it. If there's any more updates after this, I don't know. I might just do like a little short episode, sort of a news break type deal, and put that on the Facebook page just to keep up on the topic. Michael Elgin, the man who used to sport one hell of a mullet, is being accused of sending unsolicited dick pics to women. What's the deal with wrestlers and dick pics? I'm not saying all wrestlers, but what the fuck? There are some guys, and this is, there's numerous cases of wrestlers, I've heard of these, sending these dick pics. I don't know what it is, but at least be creative. You know what I mean? That's just weird to me. I don't understand why it's such this big thing. This, of course, in Elgin's case, comes after Elgin's own school had an issue with one trainee harassing another, sexually harassing another, which Elgin held some responsibility for. I mean, it was his school, and it was the kind of thing that happened within his school, and it became a thing like, hey, what the fuck's going on over there? ROH star Marty Scurll, appropriately called the Villain, is now being accused of, being a real villain, groping a fan immediately following a photo op. Again, when you compare it to all the other stuff that's going on, not as bad. I mean, remember, one guy's looking at maybe kiddie porn, so that's not good. This ain't good, but, within relative things here, I don't know. Is this what we've come to? Like, the standards are so fucking low that the guy who gropes a fan is not the worst one? That's fucking weird. Speaking of fucking weird, NWA president and former WWE writer David Lagana has resigned from the NWA after accusations by ex-girlfriend Liz Savage that he sexually assaulted her while she was sleeping. I can't believe I just said that sentence. He just resigned from the NWA, and the promotion is actually stopping production for a while to reorganize their leadership structure. So this is the kind of thing where, the NWA they're kind of trying to bring back Frankenstein's monster, like bring it back to life. And now one of the guys in charge is like, yeah, I did some terrible shit. I'm going to leave. So I've got to reorganize to try and get this monster up again. So that's an uphill battle. Plus, they didn't need this, but here we are. This is wrestling now, I guess. NXT UK star Joe Coffey is being accused of stalking, sexual harassment, and sending unsolicited nudes to at least 3 other women online. Oh my god. Again, why? I mean, what the fuck? Longtime independent wrestler David Starr has been accused by a former girlfriend of being sexually and psychologically abusive, even gaslighting her into thinking that it was her fault. Alright, We The Independent, an independent wrestling focused website that Starr founded, has cut ties with him and says they'll continue without the founder. So again, this is something that's going forward. They're just moving on, and they're going without him because right now he's really toxic, and I mean, you can't blame him, to be honest with you. Now, Starr's another unique case where he simultaneously denies some of the accusations, but then he hedges by saying that he was a dickhead, a bad boyfriend, etc. Again, not being involved, it's sort of hard to make the call whether he's actually guilty or just an emotionally stunted person or somewhere in the middle. Now, after the recent development of this, right before I started recording, is after this denial that, some of these things happen, then acceptance of responsibility simultaneously, he then deleted his Twitter account. And I don't mean made it private. I don't mean stopped tweeting, went dark. He deleted his Twitter account. And this is the kind of guy who, online, he famously picked fights with Gabe Sapolsky from Evolve Wrestling. Because, they had an argument over whether or not they were getting paid enough or things like that. So, this is the guy who picks fights online and he deletes his Twitter account entirely. Not a good sign. I'm not saying he's guilty. I'm just saying deleting the account, that makes me wonder. TJ Perkins, who's worked for TNA as Suicide, then Manic, who worked for WWE as TJP, and is now back out there. He famously started his wrestling career very young, and incredibly young. And he recently came out, was talking about how he was, I don't know if it was taken advantage of, the way he put it, taken advantage of by women who were in their early 20s when he was 15. So he was just starting out in the business, and he felt like he was taken advantage of sexually. He never really gets too explicit with it. He never gets too explicit with what he's talking about. I don't know. He doesn't say, but he says sort of manipulated, sort of taken advantage of, being young. Now, this is another thing, and I've dealt with this on Facebook, because this came out and someone put an article up, and then on one of the pages, I can't remember what page it was, one of the pages, someone said that, 15 years old, I wish I could, be manipulated like that. This double standard that, if you're a 15-year-old, 16-year-old guy, it's okay. It's not sexual abuse or manipulation. Oh, you're just a horny guy, so it's okay. It's okay if you're 15 and and you're being taken advantage of by a 20-year-old. Hey, you're a guy. It's okay. And I put something on that. It was my personal account, not the Exploder account, but my name is Dan. And But I responded, I was like, this is why a lot of these cases, that's why often men don't come on. This is why men don't, again, I don't think the cases are even. I think there are many more cases of women being abused in this way and manipulated and things like this. But the men that are, they don't come forward because you get reactions like that. Oh, well, he was a guy. It's okay. It's not okay. And I'm not going to get into the whole story, but I'll tell you, there's a little bit on it myself. When I was young, when I was real young, it's like 8 years old, I was molested by someone. I was molested by a girl on the bus. And now now that I say that, I know in the back, if I tell that story to anybody, in the back of people's minds, there's always going to be someone that goes, oh, but you're a boy. You're a guy. Molested by a girl. Well, that's not, well, it's still molesting. She was 14. She knew what she was doing. I didn't. It's not that, you know what I mean? It's not the same as some other situations. Like, there are some people that went through a lot worse, you know what I mean? A lot worse and a lot more often. And I don't want to diminish anything that anyone else gone through, but there is that double standard of, well, if a guy says it, if a teacher sleeps with a male student, wow, that's just guy. I mean, SNL's done a sketch about it. Oh yeah, we got all those high fives from sleeping with the student. You reverse the roles, and it's bad. It's bad either way, but there's that double standard that doesn't make any sense. So in TJP's case, he never really gets into it explicitly, but, I mean, it's still something to think about. It's not as common. I mean, clearly it's not as common. Look at all these other cases. But it is something you need to think about. It's something you need to consider, that it does happen in different levels, in different ways. And believe me, there's more to come, and there are many different ways that are coming. So that's just something to think about. Matt Riddle, who, as of this recording, just made his debut on SmackDown, defeating AJ Styles of all people. Thursday, he was accused of sexual assault by a woman. Now, this story makes a little bit of a turn. This story comes from a woman who made her accusations, and, I in all of these cases, I'm not taking sides. In most of these cases, I'm not taking sides. I'm not saying they're right, I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm just reporting the way they are. And then over time, we're going to find out, more or less, we're going to find out the truth, right? Matt Riddle's case, I'll be honest with you, he had a good explanation. See, what was claimed was pretty bad. I don't remember the exact details, but it was bad, right? Matt Riddle and his wife come out and they say, yeah, we've been dealing with this person for a couple of years now. It's the same woman, and that she's basically stalking them, and that he's to the point where he's ready to sue her. Years. He said years. He said he's aware of these accusations. He's been dealing with her for years, and that he's ready to sue her. This isn't someone who just sprung out of the woodwork yesterday. This is someone he's known about, that he's been dealing with, in his own words, for years. To me, I'm leaning toward Matt Riddle there. I know I make a lot of jokes about him being high, because let's be honest, he probably is. But the reality is, I'm leaning toward him on that. I mean, that's a pretty damn good defense. You know what I mean? That's a pretty damn good defense. Like, whoa, making those accusations of him go, yeah, I've heard about her for years, and WB knows about him, and my wife knows about her, and we're about to sue her because she won't leave us alone. Like, there may be more to that coming out, but that's a hell of a story. I think again, in that case, I sort of lean on the side of Matt Riddle on that one, and I'm not leaning on a lot of them, but that one I'm leaning a little bit. I'm not gonna lie. And then it comes to here we go. This is one of the big ones. There's two big ones, and this is one of them. Dave Christ. Dave Christ of Ohio versus Everyone, formerly of OI4K, Ohio is for Killers. Tag team with his brother Jake as the Irish Airborne. He's done Ring of Honor. He's done all this stuff, and he's currently in Impact. Him and his brother. There's a whole Ohio contingent in Impact right now. It's the Chris brothers and Sammy Callahan and Zachary Wentz and Desmond Xavier and Trey Miguel and guys like that. Dave Chris is being accused of just, quite frankly, being an asshole. Like, his stuff, as far as I can tell, none of his stuff is sexual in nature. A lot of these are basically sex crimes. SVU versions of wrestlers, and that'd be a weird crossover. SVU and wrestling. Anyway, I wonder what Ice-T would do. Point is, Dave Chris is just basically being accused of being a general asshole. How he treats trainees, how he treats guys behind the scenes, and if there were anyone else, honestly, I'm not behind the scenes. I said I've worked behind the scenes in one promotion locally to where I live. My trainers worked there. Well, they still do work there in some capacity. And I've worked there behind the scenes. I've not worked for other promotions. I'm not an insider. I'm not in the locker room. I don't know all the workings in and out, blah, blah, blah. But there's one thing I've known since literally the day I started training. Distinctly, there were two things I learned from training almost right at the gate that had nothing to do with actually wrestling in the ring. The first one was actually the day I started training. I trained to wrestle in 2009. And the day I started training, and this is very unfortunate, and I don't know why I just thought of this, but there used to be a wrestler named Matt Riot. He was Sami Callihan's best friend. They actually started in together in HWA, and he's a young guy named Matt Riot, and he was doing a tryout in CCW the day before, and he had passed away. Something happened at ringside. He had I don't know if it was a seizure or something, and he passed away at a very young age. I was like 24, I think. Yeah, I think I was like 24, 25. He was my age. That happened. So I learned that was that day. It was like the day I started training. And the other one was people I trust and people I respect. I'm not naming names. I mean, I don't think they'd care if I did say their names, but I'm not going to, just out of preference. They told me that Dave Christ was basically a piece of shit. And I don't know him personally. I've met him. I've said it online. I met him once in a passing way. Like he was on a show that I was helping out backstage, and just sort of saw him. I don't remember. I don't even think I shook his hand. Like, not in a disrespectful way. I just don't think we crossed paths. But I've seen him and sort of been within the vicinity of him. Never dealt with him. Never whatever. But I was told from my people that I know and respect that Dave Christ, just the way he acted, he would disrespect trainees, or he was the kind of guy, and this is when I was told explicitly, he was the kind of guy who would walk around and he would just nutshot guys, just training or whatever. He would just like that old high school thing where you like slap the guy, try to slap the guy in his balls. He would do that, and if he hit or whatever, they'd be like, oh, and then the guys would react. He'd be like, oh, you're paying your dues, rookie, or something like that. Like stuff that had nothing to do with pro wrestling, just being a dick. Being a dick. Because if you're a real veteran, if you're a real respectful veteran, you don't pull shit like that. You don't need to. Jerry Lawler doesn't do that. Jerry Lawler is a veteran. Jerry Lawler has respect for people, whether you're a rookie or you're the guy holding, getting tickets or whatever. He has enough respect for people. But I was told from almost day one, Dave Christ is a guy that's just, he doesn't respect people. He's just an asshole. And he treats everything the way he wants it. And every story I've heard since then has only been more. I've heard more and more of that. I've heard this from other wrestlers, the guys I don't personally know, but I've heard stories and I've been reading stuff about how he treats different people. Talking about a seminar where he mocked someone who had a mental handicap, and he mocked him for going to the seminar, for wanting to be in wrestling, to the point where it discouraged the guy from even trying anything. Which, why do that? What the fuck's your problem? I mean, personally, what the fuck's your problem? I don't care who you are. Why would you do that? Somebody who shows interest in wrestling. Wrestling has wrestlers with all different kinds of mental, of kinds of disabilities. Zach Gallen doesn't have a leg. Chris Melendez worked for Impact, didn't have a leg. There's people that are blind and deaf and all these different things. Why would you discourage someone who wants to be a pro wrestler? And maybe that person wasn't going to be a great pro wrestler. Maybe they were just going to be a local and, whatever. But why would you discourage someone like that right out the gate? There are different stories. There are stories I'm hearing from, a story that came out from a guy named Tony Watson, who is a stand-up comic who I know I've actually booked for a couple shows, and who's also an independent wrestler named Mickey Mavis. And he sort of goes in between stand-up and pro wrestling. Right now he's working for, if I remember correctly, Future Great Wrestling. Great organization. Cody Hawk, and I mentioned Cody Hawk for a reason, and I'll get to that. But yeah, he's got a very unique perspective because he's a very funny guy. He was a guy, like I said, I booked him on a show, didn't know anything about his wrestling past. He's a very funny guy. But during this time, he also was doing independent wrestling. And in the middle of this, he decided he was going to tell his Dave Christ story. And he's talked about how he signed up to train with him, which, being an Ohio guy, Chris, coming out of Dayton, Chris was a good, for a while, he seemed like a good guy to go train with. And he talks about how he trained with him for one day, in which Dave Christ basically took liberties with him. There's a way to train, and you don't take advantage of people, and you don't knock the guy loopy when it's not his first fucking day of training, in which he did. And then he drove back the next week. He drove back 2 hours to train again, and that they had canceled the training without telling him. And then every time he tried to contact Dave Crist kept telling him, oh, he's in CZW. And finally, he just said, screw this, and went to train with Cody Hawk. Now, this is also very important. Cody Hawk is one of the best trainers in Ohio, if not the country. And I was not trained by him. I was trained by a organization. But the organization that I trained for, I trained by guys who were trained by Al Snow. And I trained through War Wrestling. But that school itself is not ran for a lot of years. And what they do is they tell young guys, they send people, they send them to Cody. That's how much respect this guy has. This guy's trained Haley Hatred, Sammy Callahan, famously John Moxley. If you want to have I feel like I sound like I'm doing a advertisement for a school right now. I'm not, this isn't a paid thing. I just really do. I think he's a great trainer. So Tony decided to go train with Cody Hawk and become an independent wrestler. 2 years later, he talks about how Dave they were doing a seminar, and Dave Crist walks in and just starts yelling at people. This is where he mocked the trainee for being mentally handicapped to the point of mocking his voice. I'm not going to do it, but you know what I'm talking about. He then starts accusing Tony of slandering him online, no-showing an event that he clearly was at because there's video of the match. And then he starts mocking Cody, starts running Cody Hawk down as a trainer. And like I said, I said on the post, that's bullshit. You can say a lot of things in pro wrestling, but you can't really mock Cody Hawk as a trainer. And I said that, and I say that with I gain nothing from saying this. I'm just stating it as a fact. The track record he has, you can't put up that. And again, keep in mind, the Crist brothers, these are guys that had a hand. I don't know to the full extent, but they had a hand in the whole Rockstar blow up with Cody Hawk and Rockstar Pro. And the reason Cody's doing Future Great Wrestling now is because basically, long story short, the guys in Rockstar Pro screwed him over, and the Crist brothers had their hand in that. So of course they're gonna run their mouth on Cody Hawk a little bit. And they did this in a way where, they were surrounded by veterans, and, Tony himself was not, was pretty young. He was pretty new in the business. So it's one of those things where sometimes you just grit your teeth and take it. He then convinced other people to go train with them instead of train with Cody, and so on and so forth. There are other stories like that. There are other stories of how Dave in particular, and this is the one I always knew about. I always knew about Dave. They always said Dave. I never heard a lot of bad stories. I never really heard any bad stories about Jake, but I heard them about Dave. Dave was the asshole. So in the middle of all this, well, there's all these different kinds of people being accused of this and that and the other, everything from sexual harassment, emotional abuse, child pornography. Oh my God. In the middle of all this, there's just general stories about Dave Crist being an asshole. And I know there are some people, that I know that are more in line with that Dayton contingent, and they would defend him more than anything. And who am I? I'm just some comedian. I'm not a wrestler. I'm not. You're right. I'm not a wrestler. I'm not a wrestler. I'm not a manager. I'm not a ref. And I think if anything else, that's freed me up because I don't have to worry about a booking. I'm not worried about a booking from Dave Crist or any promotion that books him. I'm not worried about that. I'm a stand-up comic. Not only am I a stand-up comic, I'm a stand-up comic who books my own shows sometimes, quite often. I don't need to worry about, that's what a lot of these were. A lot of these were situations where people, why did they take so long to speak up? Well, they're taking so long to speak up because the person they were speaking up against had a certain amount of sway. The Crist brothers have or at least did, and probably still do because of their role in Impact, they have a little bit of sway in certain promotions in Ohio. It's hard, some of these guys, it was like they were well known enough, and some guys actually had power. So you're going to think twice about saying these things. And even when you're your own little microcosm, why wouldn't so-and-so speak up against Joey Ryan earlier? Well, because Joey Ryan, look at him. He's always on there. He's sponsored by YouPorn, and he has his own promotions, and he's on national television. Here's an irony. Here's a little irony about Joey Ryan. You want to talk about irony just for the hell of it? Joey Ryan is currently doing a Right to Censor knockoff in Impact Wrestling. You know what it's called? It's called #CancelCulture. I couldn't make that up if I tried. That's a real thing in the middle of all this. I just think that's funny. But yeah, so maybe you're gonna think twice because maybe it'll cost you a booking. Maybe it's gonna ruin your career. Maybe you don't have much of a career, but in that little world you're in, you speak up around the wrong person, they can get you cut off. They can get you, they can get you unbooked from even the small promotions you work in. So, I admire Tony. I talk about in this. I admire Tony Watson, Mickey Mavis, coming out and saying what he said. He's working, like I said, right now he's sort of doing stand-up and he's doing a little bit of wrestling. And he works for Future Great Wrestling. And I know for a fact there's no love lost between the guys in Future Great Wrestling and the Chris brothers. So it's not like that's going to be an issue. But maybe some other guys who want to say something or who have in the past, but they don't want to say anything because, quite frankly, it could affect their bookings, If you say stuff about the Chris brothers, or Dave Chris in particular, maybe Rockstar Pro's not going to book you in the future. And I'm not saying that's the case, I'm saying it's more likely to be the case, so maybe that's why. Now, I talk about that one because that has a personal touch there, and I'm going to link to Tony Watson's stuff, because he actually is a good comedian, and I've enjoyed the shows I've done with him. But now I'm going to get to the main event. And this is, I'll tell you right now, if in all of this, if you didn't know about this, if this is completely new to you, if you've never heard any of this, and you list all these guys, whether it's Joe Coffey, or you're talking about Wolfgang, or Travis Banks, or, Jimmy Havoc, or whoever, I'm laughing because I know what's coming. If you heard about all these names, what name would you expect not to be at the end? Like, of all these guys I just listed, the name at the end, the main event, oh my god, the main event is one you wouldn't see coming, and for good reason. This last set of accusations, and unfortunately some proof, is against Jim Cornette and his wife, Stacy. Stacy, of course, used to work in OVW as Sin. They had a group called the Disciples of Sin, of which Batista was an original member, by the way. Just a little trivia there. I like to throw a little bit of trivia in the middle of the horrible accusations. They're being accused now of sexually harassing people. Stacy supposedly using her connections to the Kentucky Athletic Commission to target particular wrestlers, using her husband's position as one of the owners of OVW at the time, using Cornette to use OVW contracts as leverage to get younger talent to sleep with his wife while he watched. Again, I'm not making that up. Now, you can say what you want, but Beautiful Bobby didn't put up with that shit. Now, this is twofold here. As far as Stacy having sex with this guy or that guy, that's between her, Jim, and whoever's holding the hamster. I don't care. That's their business, all right? Have sex with whoever you like. I don't give a shit, all right? I'm not here to be a Puritan. I don't give a shit. Now, that said, if it's true that Cornette and his wife were using their respective positions, no pun intended, with the company to make this kind of weird shit happen, now that's a different ball game. It's one thing to be like, hey, swingers or doing threesomes or whatever the hell you do in your own bedroom. I don't care. But if you're using your position in the company that you own to get people to sleep with your wife, like I said, wrestlers, and this has come from a couple wrestlers. This one guy is this AKI Evolution or something like that. It's AKI, of course, was the AKI, the Aki engine that was used in a lot of like the No Mercy and things like that. So it's like this random account. I don't know. So that seems weird. But then there's also backup from a guy who used to wrestle for OVW, who was a former OVW champion, who was wrestling there. He backs up the story and says something very similar, that Stacy tried to recruit him into whatever freaky deaky shit they were doing, and that he turned him down. Then this original account talks about how she was slashing tires and sending him explicit pictures, trying to entice him to sleep with her. Again, while she's married to Jim Cornette. And I'm not saying that it's true. I'm sort of the opposite of the Matt Riddle thing. Because Matt Riddle, like, his explanation made sense. You're like, oh, and I'm gonna lean a little toward Matt Riddle. This one, I'm gonna lean away from Jim Cornette and his wife, because this guy has screenshots. This AKI Evolution, or whoever the hell he is, he has screenshots of these conversations. And not only conversations, he's got pictures. I mean, they're Twitter safe. There's no nudity, but it's explicit, man. It's explicit enough. PG-13. It's getting there, and he's got pictures, and it's clearly her. And the language she's using it's really hard to misinterpret. So, yeah, I'm sort of leaning toward him on this. And it's a random AKI Evolution account or whatever. I mean, I'm leaning toward it. the fact that he has these now, Jim Cornette, who I know people got their thing. I don't agree with everything he says, but I like Jim Cornette. I like in general. I like the fact that when he just smacks some idiot down. I like that. I really do. I don't agree that you need to have the same wrestling you had in 1975, but at the same time, I think he's right on some guys. But he comes out and he said something on Twitter about how the screenshot couldn't be real. It was Photoshop because the profile picture in the images were of a profile picture that was only updated a day or two ago. And that's fine. And then someone pointed out, and I'm like, oh, that makes sense, except someone pointed out that if you have a message, no matter how old that message is, when you access that message, Facebook updates the profile photo to the current profile image. So I have messages right now on my phone, or where I can pull up that are from 5 years ago, but they're going to have the current profile picture. Oops. So that's not much of a defense on Mr. Cornette's part. So like I said, in that case, I'm kind of leaning toward the dude. I don't know the dude. Every single accusation in what I've said today, everything I've said today could all be false. I don't think they're all false. I think statistically that's insane. But each claim individually could be false. But the ones that have proof, the ones that have messages, the ones that have a little bit to back them up, I tend to believe them a little more. If you say something and the other person says something else and it's only the two of you, it's kind of hard to say one way or the other. As much as I don't like Joey Ryan for different reasons, I'm not going to sit here and say that he's definitely guilty because I don't know. There were two people in that car and he was one of them, right? So I'm not going to sit here and say definitively. But the people that are putting up Facebook messages with stuff that's clearly like, oh my God, like the Justin Roberts stuff. There, I'm going to put that in the video version. That's some stuff, man. In the Jim Cornette stuff, there's some images. There's some conversations here. This is something you can back up. In this modern day, it's a little hard to get away from that kind of stuff because there's physical proof sometimes, So, this was a weird episode. I wasn't planning on doing this episode at first. Usually with the news, I sort of let it go, but this was just such a dump. Everything happened within a period of 2 days. It came out on Thursday, and promotions started putting out their comments and things like that. And Jack Gallagher in particular was let go today. Promotions are suspending guys. So it's all happened within a period of 2 days. So it's just been such a huge, it's a big moment. I don't know what it's going to end up being called. Everything gets this catchy name. But this was just such a weird thing. I just couldn't let it go by. For all this to happen all at once, that's historic. It's not pretty. It's not good. It's like the Signature Pharmacy scandal back in 2007 or whatever, when they suspended 13 guys all at once for getting prescriptions on this online pharmacy. It's stuff like that. It's not good history, but it's history. So I just wanted to do that. Like I said, I've got more shows. We are still talking about doing Beans on Parade at the end of July. That is still, as of now, a go. We're still working with the venue owner on how we're going to do it. We're going to do it safe. We're going to do it logically, but we're also going to have fun with it. We're not going to put people at too much of a risk if we don't have to. We're not going to, but we're also going to have a fun show. So we're looking forward to that. We have projects, that are coming out. Again, nothing that I'm going to say out loud because I want it to be done first. But when it does, I'm going to be shilling the hell out of it on this podcast. And Comedy Outlaws is coming back. The Gromy Show is coming back. Everything, when life returns to normal again, we are going to be back live. And enjoy this episode. I hope you liked it. It's a little different. It's more modern. I know I talk about a lot of older stuff, but right now it's sort of a modern issue. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoy, I don't think anyone enjoys this kind of stuff. I would rather have done my other topic only because I wish the kind of shit didn't exist. I wish that these accusations didn't exist because these people didn't do this stuff. Statistically, not everyone's innocent and not everyone's guilty. But I wish that this episode didn't have to exist because I wish these accusations didn't exist because these people didn't do this shit. You know what I mean? So it's one of the things where it's a necessity, but it's something you don't look forward to. I hope I don't do another one like this. I hope there's not another big, throw out of all these different, here's 47 more guys have been accused of this, that, the other. I hope that doesn't happen. But I hope you got at least a little bit of entertainment out of what's ostensibly a shitty situation for a lot of people involved. But until next time, my name's Dan, this is Exploder, have a good one.